Hello everybody, so welcome to this video, and as you can see, Python job interviews. What's this going to be all about, I hear you ask, so let's get straight to it. I want to just discuss my experience of Python job interviews and especially focus on the ones which were unsuccessful, and I'll explain why and some of the problems that you may come across. And if you come across other issues, then please drop some comments and let's kind of build a list of potential obstacles to being successful when applying for jobs which mention Python. Obviously, a lot of jobs are described badly. It will say Python developer, and then in the second line, it may say something like, um, it'll say AWS, and basically it'd be a DevOps role or something. What's DevOps? What's AWS? We'll get to that in a minute. So I think the first problem is to get actually past the first hurdle. You will need a CV which is of the correct, not the correct format, but it needs to have the correct keywords on it. So if you can get all the necessary keywords onto your CV, you'll probably get noticed. So you'll probably need some professional certifications. I watched a video a couple of days ago, and it was talking about domain experience. In watching that, I forget who did it, code engineer or something. I'll try and find it, but what he was saying was you actually need domain experience. So if you're applying for a Python developer role focused on, for instance, healthcare, then obviously it benefits if you've got lots of healthcare experience. And from my limited experience, I know that to be true, because if you want to do, for instance, data science within healthcare, there's a standard format of JSON file and there's a kind of a framework for working with data within the healthcare world. And when I say world, I really do mean world. FHIR. So if you want to kind of go down that route, then you'd need to probably learn about FHIR and build up your domain experience of the health service, and ETL. And again, what's ETL? I'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, domain experience and just experience in general. And also, don't just think about the experience that you've got which will be useful. Think about what experience you've got that may be irrelevant. So if you're applying again, I'll just use healthcare as an example. If you've got a job application for data engineer for health science company, for instance, then you probably don't want to be putting that you worked for 3 years in I don't know, say I wouldn't say military. Let's think of another example. I don't know. Say say crypto or something. Say you were an engineer with a betting company. Say you worked for an online programming an online casino app or something. Healthcare, they might be. I don't know. Anyone got any views on that? I don't actually know on that. So without talking about things I don't know, I'll try and talk about things I do know. So yeah, experience. Your CV also, if you've come from a slightly different background, for instance, you were, for instance, a Cisco certified network engineer, and you're trying to move across towards software engineering, software developing, and you may wish to kind of downplay the hands-on engineering aspect, or the knowledge that's specific to what you previously did. There's no point saying, "Oh, I know how to, I know how to configure the latest firewall from scratch using the command line," if the data science job requires you to use Pandas, PySpark, Hadoop, and AWS. So yeah, number two, AWS straight cloud. So there's a bit of a barrier to entry there, really. And if you're like me and you don't want to hand over your credit card details, then the first thing you can do to help yourself is be familiar with the jargon, the terminology. So you can do that free of charge. You can do that by watching, obviously, videos on YouTube. If you want to get some familiarity with the cloud and you just want to see how you can use Python to to solve problems or to set up stuff. So when I say set up stuff, that's actually called infrastructure as code. Yeah, I've done some Google GCP videos whilst I was learning GCP. I'd previously taken the foundation exam and passed for Oracle OCI. So even doing Oracle OCI Cloud with the kind of the very obviously structured course, that benefited me when I was learning Google GCP. And obviously if you've learned either Oracle, which is most of that's pretty free, Google's free for the first 3 months, so you've got 3 months to learn Google Cloud, and then obviously a lot of that is transferable presumably to AWS or Azure. Again, it just snowballs, but yeah, the point I'm getting to is you will need to be able to talk the talk at least, and if you've got some example projects and you've managed to obtain some access to AWS or another cloud platform, then that will probably help. I had a couple of, if you go to my website, I had a couple of projects which were live running on Google Cloud Platform. They're not anymore because something I set up, I forget what it was. I think I set up a PostgreSQL server, and for whatever reason they started to charge me for a couple of things, and I just thought, oh, I don't want to do that. Because even although the first 3 months with Google was free and you got $300 of credit, as soon as 3 months are up and you've set up something which, without kind of reading through millions of pages of documentation, then you will end up getting charged. And unless you monitor that every day, I set up some thresholds, but unfortunately, I used a couple of Gmail accounts, obviously because, well, not obviously, but I used a couple of Gmail accounts because my main one would get spammed, and yeah, my alerts were going to my other account and I didn't notice for a few days. So yeah, if you sign up for anything cloud, just be careful. Thus, if you can, obviously payment methods around the world are being, how should we say, scrutinized. Certain obstacles are being put in the way of payment methods in certain countries, and I can see that only getting worse. Anyway, yeah, so the other thing you could do is set up your own cloud. There's different ways of doing that. Don't know a great deal about that, but I know that you can set up your own kind of cloud. And then there's other types of cloud. There's kind of IPFS. Cloud is a bunch of servers out there, which if you're writing code, then really you're interested in just writing the code, and you don't want to be an advanced cloud architect. So you don't want to waste the next 5 years, or not waste, but you don't want to spend the next 5 years of your life learning to be a cloud architect and learning all about IAM, for instance. Obviously you need to know about it, but you don't want to know every single finer detail of IAM, which is identity access management. It keeps changing name on Cisco, or in Cisco world, that's AAA. Authentication, authorization, accounting, and it was AAA for years, but now it's called IAM in certain circles. Doubtless, whatever area you work in, it will have a 3-letter initialism. No, I said initialism and not acronym. Anyway, I'm going off topic here. Yeah, so the first thing is experience, and that can either work for you or work against you. And from my experience, no pun intended, my experience worked against me. And one of the things that was noted was I had the question: would you agree that you are self-taught? And that's kind of a bit of a checkmate, really, because if it's evident that you are, and I don't think there's any shame in that. I think that shows a bit of willingness to learn. It shows motivation. But obviously, if you're a corporate company and you want somebody who's come up through a university and gone through all of the correct channels, I think if you've studied at university, you've probably covered all of the basics, and you've covered everything correctly. I think if you're self-taught, you may well have missed certain topics. For instance, assembly language, compiling C code, and obviously the more you know about that, memory addresses, pointers, registers. If you've just picked up a Python book and learned that for 2 years, you probably won't know you may have missed some of the fundamentals. That's all I'm going to say there. Yeah, number 3. Okay. Test. So you've got TDD, which is test-driven design, and BDD, which is behavior-driven design. Behavior-driven design is kind of, keep it short, is like using Selenium to click loads of buttons on the GUI. Test-driven design, you write tests before you write the code. So you write a test to say, there's this the function called doubler, and then you pass a number to it, and then you pass it the answer, and then you do a self dot assert equals statement, and then you say doubler, and then you say 2, and then comma, and then 4, and so on, and then you want to end up with 4 as your answer. And then if you modify, or once you've written your code to do the doubling, then you run your test again, and then it may sound trivial, but you could be passing it a negative integer, you could be passing it a character, and so on. So there's very good reasons for run testing, and obviously if you just don't know anything about it at all, then you're probably not going to get too far. So even if you don't want to spend months learning it, it's probably worth spending days or weeks just including it occasionally in your projects, I would say, maybe. So yeah, TDD, test-driven design. Yeah, Agile and Scrum. So if you're applying for a job where you'll be part of a team of several people, maybe 1 or 2, then it might not crop up. But if you're going to be an out-and-out developer, then Agile and Scrum will be words that you at least need to know what they mean. I'm not going to cover them here because I don't know enough about them, but just, I think, be knowledgeable about them, and yeah, that's all I'm going to say, really. It will crop up, so you at least need to know what it is. Frameworks. So yeah, sometimes you might see Django or Flask. And if you prefer Flask and you've got some experience with that, it could be enough. But I suspect experience with Django. Now you might think, oh well, why Django? And I think from what I gather, it's mainly because of the account management, authentication, Java Web Tokens, all of the IAM/AAA kind of stuff, which you get kind of built into Django. JavaScript, yeah. So if you can kind of split a lot of the web style Python jobs into kind of front end or back end. So in general, you'll be looking for either Python with a bit of JavaScript or Python plus SQL. So you'll very rarely find Python jobs that just want somebody who can write Python code, because obviously Python doesn't live in a world by itself. So yeah, frameworks. You're going to need to have one, probably several frameworks under your belt to go with that, especially if you're not so hot on the cloud side of things. With cloud, they'll be throwing around words such as Lambda, Docker, Kubernetes, and so on. So if you're not so hot on that, you probably need to be good on frameworks. So either Django or backend with SQL, or NoSQL now, which I've been asked on a couple of interviews, what do you know about NoSQL? Anyway, next thing, CS degree, computer science degree. Well, obviously, if you're changing career and you don't have access to or the finance to do a 2 or 3 year computer science degree, then yeah, you're going to be at a bit of a disadvantage. And all I can really comment is from what I've seen people recommend is you work on help on an open source project and build up your skills that way and get something on your CV which is kind of tangible, shall we say. Failing that, then even if you do freelance work, such that I did for a while, um, employers, um, employers, if you do that for too long, employers worry that you've become a lone wolf coder. And I think probably the benefit of working on an open source project will be that it shows that you can work as part of a team. Communication as well. So going back to part 1, experience, and part 2, no, just part 1. It's part 1, kind of experience, and have you worked in a team before? And if you've not worked in a team, I've got a bit of a downer on teams, and that's just that's my problem, and I'm not going to go into that. But there's a saying, there's no I in team, but from my experience, team actually just means one person when it boils down to it. Or if team doesn't equal one person, then it just means, and sometimes it can mean you're just hot swappable like a light bulb, really. But anyway, so also one last thing to add, which I haven't put on here, but it's number 7, is be aware of the latest kind of trend. And for instance, blockchain or Bitcoin or crypto, whatever you want to call it, obviously Bitcoin uses the blockchain. Cryptos, which I would say are different, cryptos really can be referred I think Bitcoin stands on its own, so we'll park that. So cryptos, you've got all your things like your DeFi, NFTs, and so on. If you want to learn about those, then by learning those or learning about those and how to work with those, you're going to have less of a disadvantage because they've not been around so long. However, they are changing probably more quickly. So if you learn something today, it could be old by next year. I mean, already, you've got languages like Solidity, Viper, Go. So potentially, if you learn one of those, that may not be around in 2 years' time. But underneath it all is still a programming language, and you're still doing problem solving and using code to do it. So anything is better than nothing. So on that note, I think I'll leave it there. And really, I just kind of, hopefully some people will comment on this, because I've got my kind of, I wouldn't say biases, but experiences, but I'm just interested to see what other people say about this and if other people agree. And I've deliberately kept it kind of short to 6 kind of categories, and if anybody wants to comment on any of those, their importance, or how you can kind of not cheat, but how you can kind of leapfrog, and how you can kind of still tick off these boxes and get a Python job if that's what you're looking for. If Python's just your hobby, then get a Raspberry Pi and just tinker. But on that note, I think I'll leave it here, and thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, and all the usual stuff. I know it's boring, but yeah, the algorithm needs it apparently. So yeah, thank you, and we'll see you again.